Foundations of Amateur Radio. Have you ever taken a moment to consider the available bandwidth on the various amateur bands? As an entrant into amateur radio in Australia, as a Foundation license holder, you have access to 6 different amateur bands: the 80 metre band, 40 metres, 15 metres, 10 metres, 2 metres and 70 centimetres. If you add the bandwidth from each of those bands together, you end up with 26.65 MHz worth of bandwidth to play with in Australia. I can tell you that's a big chunk of bandwidth, but until I give you some context, 26.65 MHz isn't likely something that you can picture. You might think of things as being pretty crowded. For example, on the 40 metre band during a contest, it's common to hear wall-to-wall signals. There's barely enough room to call CQ and not interfere with anyone else. But how crowded is it really? Let's start with an SSB signal. Typically it's 2.4 kHz wide. On the 40 metre band with 300 kHz of bandwidth, there's room for about 125 SSB signals side by side. On the 10 metre band, there's space for over 700 SSB signals side by side. Across all the available bandwidth for a Foundation license holder in Australia, there's room for over 11,000 different SSB signals side by side. While we're on the subject of crowding, there's talk about the massive influx of FT8. Some call it a scourge. FT8 channels are transmitted within a single SSB channel, and each takes up 50 Hz. That means that within an SSB channel of 2.4 kHz, there's room for 48 different FT8 channels, and if you take into account the odd and even time slots, that doubles to 96 different signals, all within the same single SSB channel. So, while FT8 is popular and growing, let's not get too excited about how much space it's taking up. From the perspective of an Australian Foundation license holder, it's taking up exactly 6 separate SSB slots. Of those 11,000 across the 6 available bands, room for 576 separate FT8 signals, taking up a total of 14.4 kHz, or 0.05% of the available bandwidth. Let's look at this another way. Of the 26.65 MHz available bandwidth, 20 MHz is from the 70 centimetre band alone. That means that all the other bands put together fit inside the 70 centimetre band 3 times over. Let that sink in for a moment. Adding the 80 metre, 40 metre, 15 metre, 10 metre and 2 metre band together fit inside the 70 centimetre band 3 times. You can use the 70 centimetre band alone for 800,000 FT8 signals. Remember that there's 2 time slots, so you get 2 for 1. If this makes your mind explode, then consider that a carrier wave signal is considered to be about 25 Hz wide. So on the 70 centimetre band, you could have 800,000 individual CW signals. You could allocate a personal CW frequency to every one of the amateurs in the United States in the 70 centimetre band and still have room for expansion. Not that I'm advocating that, just to give you a sense of scale. I should note that the 70 centimetre band in the United States is even larger than it is in Australia, but I don't want to get bogged down into the various band plans across the world at the moment. You might ask yourself, why am I getting so excited about this? Amateur radio is about experimentation. I've been telling you about HF propagation and using techniques like FT8s to determine just how far your signal goes. But you could use the same techniques to build a 70 centimetre communication network with the amateurs within your city and share information across the city, perhaps even build a mesh network using your 70 centimetre handheld and an FT8 call network. It could be used to distribute propagation information, or messages in case of an emergency, or form the basis of something completely different. If that doesn't whet your appetite, consider that the 1 mm amateur band, which runs from 241 to 250 GHz, is ready for you to experiment when your license permits. The current world distance record is 114 kilometers, set in 2008, by Brian Whiskey Alpha 1 Zulu Mike Sierra and Peter Whiskey 4 Whiskey Whiskey Quebec. It has 9 GHz bandwidth and has room for 360 million FT8 signals, or 60 exclusive FT8 channels for every amateur on the planet. My point is that as radio amateurs, we have access to a massive chunk of radio bandwidth, and it's just sitting there, waiting for you to experiment with. I'm Onno, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima, Alpha Bravo.